Earth was dying. What was once a vibrant planet, teeming with life and human progress, was now a battleground. The Zarn Collective, an alien race known for their ruthlessness and advanced technology, had ravaged humanity's colonies across the galaxy. Human cities lay in ruins, and the people who had once thrived on their homeworld now fought for survival. It seemed like the end for humankind. For years, Earth's leaders had searched for any way to push back against the invaders. But with every failed counterattack, their hope had dwindled. The once proud armies of humanity were nothing more than remnants of a forgotten time. The Zarn's weapons were unmatched, their ships invulnerable, and their warriors nearly indestructible. Earth had become a target, its defenses barely holding on as the Zarn's forces circled like vultures, ready to finish what they had started. But humanity's last hope wasn't something they'd found through battle. It was something buried deep beneath the surface of Mars. Commander Rhea Voss, a battle-hardened leader with a reputation for finding solutions when there seemed to be none, was tasked with leading a small, desperate team to uncover a secret that could turn the tide. The Martian ruins held the key, a long-forgotten warship, one that had been created during the height of human power, a ship unlike anything humanity had ever seen. The team consisted of engineers, archaeologists, and soldiers, all united by one goal: to discover the truth hidden beneath Mars. As Rhea and her team journeyed through the crumbled Martian city, they could only imagine the weapon that might be hidden there. The ruins themselves were massive, a testament to the glory of a time when humanity had reached for the stars. Yet, the silence around them was deafening. The walls, once adorned with grand murals of human victory, were now cracked and weathered. The air was thin, the cold seeping through their suits, but there was a sense of something more, a feeling that they were on the verge of discovering something powerful. Rhea's heart pounded in her chest as they ventured deeper into the ruins. Her mind raced with possibilities. Could this ship be the weapon they needed? Could it be the last hope of humanity? They finally found it. Buried beneath the ruins of an ancient structure, they uncovered the remains of what appeared to be an enormous warship. The ship was unlike anything Rhea had ever seen, even in the most advanced human military archives. It had strange markings, and its design was unlike any other human craft, sleek, angular, and powerful. It was clear that this was no ordinary ship. This was something ancient, something that had been waiting to be rediscovered. When Rhea gave the order to activate the ship, a strange hum filled the air. It was soft at first, a low vibration that seemed to echo through the entire structure. But as the ship's systems powered up, the hum grew louder, until it was a full-bodied sound that seemed to reverberate from the very core of the ship. The ground beneath them trembled, and the lights in their helmets flickered as the ship began to wake from its long slumber. The ship's AI system, known as Aegis, began to activate. It was an ancient artificial intelligence, one that had been designed to control every aspect of the ship's operations. As the team worked quickly to interface with the ship's systems, Rhea felt a spark of hope for the first time in years. This ship could be humanity's salvation. But the excitement was short-lived. As the last systems of the ship came online, Rhea's team was suddenly ambushed by the Zarn Collective's elite soldiers. These were the deadliest warriors the Zarn had to offer, and they were ready to end humanity's hope before it even had a chance to rise. The Zarn attacked without warning, pouring out of hidden crevices in the ruins and flooding the area with gunfire. The humans fought back, but the odds were overwhelmingly against them. The Zarn were faster, stronger, and far more advanced in terms of weaponry. Rhea's soldiers engaged in close-quarters combat, trying to buy time for the engineers to finish unlocking the ship's weapons systems. In the chaos of the battle, Bonner, one of Rhea's most trusted soldiers, was struck down. A Zarn soldier had targeted him from a distance, and despite Rhea's desperate efforts to save him, Bonner's wounds were too severe. As he lay dying, he managed to whisper something to Rhea. "The ship, it's not just a weapon. It's humanity's final chance. You must activate it. Before they destroy us all." Bonner's words echoed in her mind. Was this ship really humanity's last hope? Or was it too powerful, too dangerous for the world to wield? Ria's heart sank as she realized that the cost of activating the ship could be even higher than she had imagined. But there was no time for second thoughts. The Zarn were closing in, and the ship was humanity's only chance for survival. As Bonner's body was carried away by his comrades, Ria made the decision that would determine the fate of the entire human race. She would activate the ship, even if it meant risking everything. But the question remained, would activating the ship be enough? Hook and suspense, first 8 to 9 minutes. The activation of the ship marked a turning point in the battle for Earth, but it wasn't the salvation Ria had hoped for. As the ship powered up, Aegis, the ship's AI, spoke for the first time. Warning, full power cannot be achieved without the final blood sacrifice. Ria froze. She had heard of legends, of ancient human warships with powerful, unknown abilities, but she had never imagined this. A blood sacrifice? Was this a cruel twist of fate, or did it truly mean the ship needed something more, a price to pay? Her mind raced. Could Bonner's death have been the sacrifice the ship required? Was the ship telling her that there was no hope left for humanity unless someone else died? Tension filled the air as the Zarn forces regrouped. They could sense that something powerful was about to happen, and they weren't about to let humanity escape with its last hope. Ria's soldiers, exhausted and wounded, fought fiercely, but their chances of survival were rapidly diminishing. The Zarn were relentless. As Aegis continued to provide cryptic messages, Ria realized that the situation had become even more dire than she had thought. She had two choices, either continue to fight and risk the destruction of the eternal flame or find a way to fulfill the ship's demand for a sacrifice. The clock was ticking, and the Zarn were closing in. The suspense mounted as Ria struggled with the choice before her. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing on her shoulders. The fate of humanity rested on her shoulders, and no matter what choice she made, it would come at a heavy cost. Could she bring herself to make the sacrifice, or would the Zarn win, and Earth fall to their merciless grip? The hum of the ship's systems grew louder, and the energy field around them pulsed as if the ship itself was waiting. Would Ria take the final step and risk everything? Would humanity survive, or was the ship's awakening a signal of its doom? The answers seemed just beyond reach, and the audience would have to keep watching to discover whether the final battle would lead to victory, or destruction. The tension gripped the audience, and the first 9 minutes of the story had left them desperate to find out what would happen next. The eternal flame was no longer just a forgotten relic of a bygone era, it was alive, and its power was staggering. Ria stood in awe as the ancient warship began to rumble and hum, its systems coming online one by one. The ship's immense size was overwhelming, its structure forged from a material that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Its hull shimmered, almost ethereal in the dim light of Mars, as if it were a part of the planet itself, waiting to be awakened. As Ria and her team scrambled to understand what was happening, the ship's ancient systems began to pulse with raw energy. The walls of the ship illuminated with a faint blue light, casting long shadows across the crew as they hurried to access the control panels. Every console flickered to life, displaying complex alien symbols and lines of code that none of them could comprehend. The sheer scale of what they were witnessing was unlike anything they had ever imagined. Then, as they worked frantically to unlock the ship's full potential, a series of hums reverberated through the entire structure. Ria's heart raced as the ship's capabilities slowly began to reveal themselves. The first system to activate was the gravity manipulation technology. Ria had read about such technology in theoretical papers, but to see it in action was beyond belief. The air around them seemed to shift, and gravity within the ship began to fluctuate. It wasn't just the gravity inside the ship that changed, the entire environment around them seemed to bend and distort as the ship's gravity generators activated. Ria quickly realized that this technology could give humanity the edge they needed. The ability to control gravity could turn the tide of any battle, giving them the power to maneuver ships in ways the Zarn had never imagined. But this was only the beginning. The ship's cloaking devices powered up next. It was unlike anything Rhea had ever seen in human technology. The ship's surface rippled, like water disturbed by a stone, and in the blink of an eye, the eternal flame disappeared from sight. The cloaking system was so advanced that it didn't just make the ship invisible, it bent the light around it, creating a distortion that was impossible for even the most advanced Zarn sensors to detect. Rhea's heart skipped a beat. This was a weapon of unimaginable power, and yet it was only a fraction of what the ship could do. But the most terrifying revelation came next: weapon systems that defied all logic. Massive cannons, plasma emitters, and energy blades appeared in the ship's hull, as if they had been waiting for activation. The weapons were sleek and elegant, designed for maximum destruction. They were capable of wiping out entire fleets with a single strike, and yet their sheer beauty made them seem almost unreal. As Rhea and her team stared at the weapon systems, they knew that they had unleashed something far more dangerous than they had anticipated. The ship's AI, Aegis, flickered to life once more, its voice calm and cold. The eternal flame is now operational. All systems are ready for activation. But be warned, you have awoken a force that will be hunted. Rhea's heart sank. The ship's warning was clear: activating the eternal flame had set in motion a chain of events that could not be undone. The Zarn would stop at nothing to destroy the ship and its crew. They were not just fighting for survival anymore, they were now the hunted. As if on cue, a message came through on the comms, a garbled transmission, but the message was clear: the Zarn fleet was coming. The arrival of Lord Thrax and the Zarn fleet. The calm, quiet air of the Martian landscape was shattered as Rhea's team looked to the skies. The faint outline of the Zarn fleet appeared on the horizon, their massive ships descending from the stars like an unstoppable wave. Each ship was a fortress, armed to the teeth with weapons capable of decimating entire cities in seconds. The Zarn had been relentless in their pursuit of humanity's extinction, and now, with the activation of the eternal flame, they were ready to finish what they had started. At the head of the fleet was Lord Thrax, the ruthless leader of the Zarn collective. Thrax was known for his unyielding cruelty and unparalleled strategic mind. He was a conqueror who had wiped out countless civilizations, and now he was bent on eradicating humanity once and for all. His flagship, the Imperial Tyrant, was a monstrous ship bristling with weapons and shielded by the most advanced technology the Zarn had ever developed. Lord Thrax had seen the activation of the Eternal Flame as a direct challenge to his authority. He knew that this ancient warship could be the only thing standing in the way of his total domination. If humanity was to survive, this ship must be destroyed, and Thrax was prepared to do whatever it took to make sure that happened. Rhea's team was scrambling to understand the ship's systems, but the urgency was mounting. The Zarn fleet was closing in faster than they had anticipated. They had mere hours, maybe even minutes, before the Zarn launched their final assault on Mars. In the command center of the ship, Rhea stood at the head of her team, her face set in determination. The once hopeful idea of the eternal flame being humanity's savior now felt like a burden. The ship's immense power was undeniable, but using it came with a price. The enemy was closing in, and Rhea knew that the time to act had arrived. "We don't have much time," Rhea said, her voice firm. "We need to unlock the weapon systems and prepare to defend ourselves. The Zarn won't hesitate to destroy us." Aegis responded, its voice unflinching. "Warning, activating weapon systems will cause irreversible damage to the surrounding environment. The Zarn will pursue you relentlessly once you engage." Rhea's hand clenched into a fist. She had always been willing to sacrifice everything for humanity, but now the stakes were higher than ever. She couldn't back down. She had to protect the last of humanity, and this ship, this eternal flame, was their only chance. "Do it. Unlock the weapon systems. We'll face the consequences." The team worked furiously, typing commands into the ship's consoles, the screens flashing with symbols they couldn't fully understand. Slowly, one by one, the weapon systems activated, and Rhea could feel the shift in the air. The ship's weapons were now ready to be unleashed, and though a part of her was afraid of what was to come, there was also a spark of hope. This was humanity's final stand. Aegis warning and humanity's resolve. As the weapons systems hummed to life, the tension in the ship's command center was palpable. But Aegis had more to say. Warning, activating this warship will mark you for death. The Zarn will pursue you across the galaxy. Your location will be known to them the moment you engage. Rhea stood tall, her eyes fixed on the ship's glowing consoles. The AI was right, the Zarn would not stop until they had eradicated them. But Rhea's resolve had only hardened. She was ready to face whatever came next. "We'll fight," she said, her voice unwavering. "We have no other choice. Humanity's fate lies in our hands, and we will not go down without a fight." As the Zarn fleet grew nearer, Rhea felt a fire within her. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about ensuring that humanity had a future, that Earth would not fall to the Zarn's tyranny. With the eternal flame now operational, they had the power to push back. It wasn't just a warship, it was a symbol of humanity's resilience. And as the Zarn ships began their final descent onto Mars, the crew of the Eternal Flame braced for battle. They were no longer running, they were ready to fight back. The war was far from over, but humanity had found its last weapon, and it was one that even the Zarn had not anticipated. Rhea looked at her team, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. "Prepare yourselves. We're about to make history." The moment had come, and the fate of Earth was about to be decided. Would humanity prevail, or would the eternal flame be nothing more than a brief spark in the dark? The battle for the galaxy was just beginning. Rhea stood in the command center, her fingers trembling as she hovered over the control panel. The Zarn fleet was now within range, and the moment of truth had arrived. She had activated the eternal flame, and the ship's incredible systems were fully online. But now came the first real test: could they use this power to defend humanity, or would it overwhelm them? Could they stand up to the Zarn, or were they doomed to fail? The enemy was already closing in. Rhea could see the massive Zarn ships in the distance, their dark forms menacing against the backdrop of Mars. Their weapons were powered up, and they were preparing to bombard the planet. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and Rhea knew there was no time to waste. She glanced at her team, each member of the crew focused on their tasks. Bonner's death still weighed heavily on all of them, but there was no time to mourn. They had to fight. They had to win. "Prepare the ship for battle," Rhea ordered, her voice calm but resolute. "All weapons online. We take the fight to them." As she issued the command, the ship's systems hummed with power. The Eternal Flame's weapons unlocked, and the air around them crackled with energy. Rhea watched as the ship's massive plasma cannons began to charge, the glow from the weapons lighting up the darkened control room. For a moment, everything felt surreal. It was as if they had awoken a sleeping giant, a giant that was now ready to unleash its fury. With a single motion, Rhea activated the ship's cloaking systems. The Eternal Flame vanished from view, just as the Zarn fleet began their final descent. For a few precious moments, they had the advantage. The Zarn didn't know where the attack was coming from. They wouldn't know what hit them. The silence was shattered as the Eternal Flame decloaked, revealing its true form to the Zarn. It was a sight to behold, a massive warship, gleaming with energy, its weapons poised to strike. The Zarn ships, which had once seemed invincible, now appeared tiny in comparison. The plasma cannons fired first, sending streams of bright blue energy streaking toward the enemy fleet. The effect was immediate. Zarn ships that had been in the front lines were torn apart by the blasts, their outer hulls disintegrating in fiery explosions. The sheer power of the weapons was unimaginable. It was as if the Eternal Flame had become a force of nature, tearing through the enemy like a knife through butter. The Zarn were not prepared for this level of destruction. The plasma vortexes followed next. The ship unleashed massive bursts of concentrated energy that swirled into deadly vortexes, each one large enough to swallow a Zarn ship whole. The first vortex hit a cluster of enemy vessels, ripping them apart in an instant. The visuals were stunning. Enormous ships vanished in fiery explosions, while others were torn apart by the sheer force of the attack. The Zarn forces scattered in panic, their once confident formations now in disarray. But despite the chaos on the battlefield, the Zarn were not easily defeated. They regrouped quickly, launching counterattacks against the Eternal Flame. Laser blasts and missile strikes came from every direction, but the ship's advanced shields held strong. For a moment, it seemed like victory was within reach. Humanity was fighting back, and they were winning. However, as the battle raged on, Rhea began to notice something troubling. The ship's systems were beginning to act erratically. The energy levels surged, flickering in a way that made her uneasy. Her fingers flew across the console as she tried to assess the situation, but the more she tried to stabilize the systems, the worse it seemed to get. "Aegis, report." Rhea barked, her voice tight with urgency. The AI's voice came through the comms, calm but laced with a tone of warning. "Warning, power levels are fluctuating. The ship's core is becoming unstable. Continued use of the weapon systems at this rate could result in catastrophic damage." Rhea's heart sank. They were winning, but at what cost? The ship's power was too much, and the Eternal Flame was starting to break under the strain. Aegis had warned her that pushing the ship too hard could be disastrous, but she hadn't anticipated just how quickly things would deteriorate. The Zarn were relentless. They were not going to stop until the Eternal Flame was destroyed. The ship had given humanity its chance to strike back, but now, that chance was slipping away. The energy levels were dangerously high, and Rhea knew that if they didn't act fast, the ship would overload. The decision was clear, but it was not easy. The ship needed to be stabilized, and fast. But the only way to do that would be to sacrifice someone. The core had to be manually recalibrated to prevent a catastrophic meltdown, and that meant one of them had to go in. One of them had to make the ultimate sacrifice. Rhea's mind raced as she looked around at her team. They were all willing to fight to the death, but this was different. This wasn't about fighting an enemy, it was about saving the ship, saving humanity. She turned to Juno, a young soldier who had joined their team not long before the battle began. Juno had a family back home, and his eyes had always been full of hope. Rhea didn't want to ask him to do this. She didn't want to ask anyone to do this. But there was no choice. The ship needed stabilization, and Juno was the best suited for the job. "Juno," Rhea said, her voice filled with pain. "I need you to stabilize the core. You're the only one who can do it." Juno looked at her, his face filled with understanding. There was no hesitation in his eyes. He knew the risks, but he didn't flinch. "I'm ready," he said quietly. Rhea's heart ached as she watched him prepare. She wanted to say more, to promise him that he would be remembered, but there were no words that could make this any easier. Juno didn't need promises. He needed action. With one last look at Rhea, Juno disappeared into the bowels of the ship, heading toward the core. The rest of the team continued to fight, but Rhea could feel the weight of Juno's sacrifice in her chest. She focused on the battle, but every explosion, every blast from the Eternal Flame's weapons, reminded her of what was happening below. Moments later, the comms crackled to life, and Aegis's voice filled the room. "The core has been stabilized. However, the power surge has caused significant damage to several systems. The ship is no longer at full capacity." Rhea nodded grimly. They had bought themselves time. But the cost was high. Juno was gone, and his sacrifice would never be forgotten. With the core stabilized, the Eternal Flame continued its fight. The Zarn fleet was in disarray, but they were far from finished. The battle had only just begun. And Rhea knew that this fight would cost more than just one life. The stakes were higher than ever, and humanity's survival hung in the balance. "We press on," Rhea said, her voice filled with determination. "For Juno. For Earth." The eternal flame roared again, and the battle for humanity's future raged on. The dust from the battle had barely settled when the crew of the eternal flame finally allowed themselves a moment of respite. The Zarn fleet, once an unstoppable force, was now in retreat, scattered in disarray across the skies of Mars. Rhea's team stood on the bridge, watching as the Zarn ships fled into the distance, their once mighty formation now reduced to chaotic, panicked movements. Victory, however, felt hollow. The heavy weight of sacrifice hung in the air, the memory of Juno's final act of heroism fresh in Rhea's mind. "We did it," said Lieutenant Cole, his voice barely above a whisper. "We actually did it. We beat them." The team exchanged tired but triumphant looks, each one of them processing the enormity of what they had just accomplished. The eternal flame had taken the fight to the Zarn, and they had won. The ancient warship, once thought to be a relic of the past, had given them a fighting chance. It was a beacon of hope for humanity, the last symbol of resistance against an overwhelming alien force. But just as the team began to breathe a sigh of relief, a cold, mechanical voice cut through the silence. It was Aegis, the ship's artificial intelligence. "Commander Rhea, there is something you need to know," Aegis said, the usual calm in the AI's tone now replaced by something colder, more urgent. The eternal flame was not built to fight the Zarn. Rhea's heart skipped a beat. She turned to the central control panel, where the AI's interface flickered, its holographic form shimmering in front of them. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice filled with unease. "The eternal flame was created to fight a far greater threat. A threat humanity has not faced in millennia. A threat that is now awakening from its long slumber." The room fell silent. No one moved. The weight of Aegis's words settled on them like a heavy blanket. They had just faced an enemy the size of which they could barely comprehend, and now they were being told that it was nothing compared to what was coming. "The Dominion," Aegis continued. "An ancient faction that once ruled the galaxy with an iron fist. They were the true masters of the stars, feared and hated by all who knew of them. But they were sealed away, locked in a deep slumber by those who feared their power. The eternal flame was designed to combat them, built as a weapon of unimaginable power to stand against the Dominion's forces." Rhea's mind raced. The Dominion? She had heard whispers of them, of course. Old stories passed down through the generations of humanity. Stories of a race so powerful that entire star systems had crumbled beneath their rule. But those were just legends, myths, nothing more. "I don't understand," Rhea said, trying to process what Aegis was telling her. "If the Dominion was so powerful, why didn't we know about them? Why didn't the Zarn know about them?" "They have been dormant for centuries," Aegis explained. "The Dominion's empire collapsed long ago, and their fleets were scattered across the galaxy. But the seed of their power remained, hidden in the far reaches of space. The Zarn, though mighty, were never truly a threat compared to what the Dominion once was. They have only been a precursor to something much worse." Rhea shook her head, disbelief etched on her face. "So we've been fighting the wrong war this whole time?" Aegis paused before responding. "Not the wrong war, Commander. But the real war is just beginning." Rhea glanced around at her team. Cole, Kira, and the others were all staring at the holographic display, their faces a mix of confusion and fear. They had been through so much already. They had just lost one of their own. And now, they were being told that their victory had been nothing more than a brief respite, a momentary victory before an even darker storm descended upon them. The sound of a soft chime filled the room, followed by a harsh, mechanical beep. Aegis spoke again, this time more urgently. "Commander, you need to see this." Rhea moved to the console, her heart pounding in her chest. The screen flickered, and suddenly, a map of nearby star systems appeared in front of them. Aegis had marked a series of coordinates, somewhere deep in space, near a star system they had never even heard of before. The Dominion scout ships have been detected, Aegis explained. They have emerged from a nearby star system. They are on the move. And they are bringing with them a fleet larger than anything we've ever faced. The room was silent as the enormity of what Aegis was revealing began to sink in. The Zarn had been bad, but the Dominion was something else entirely. If their fleet was as powerful as Aegis suggested, humanity's chances of survival were slim to none. The Eternal Flame had given them a fighting chance against the Zarn, but could it stand up to an enemy that was more ancient, more powerful, and more ruthless? Rhea stood frozen, her mind racing. The Eternal Flame had been built to fight the Dominion, but now that the time had come, was it enough? Was humanity ready to face this new enemy, one that had been lurking in the shadows for so long? And, perhaps most terrifying of all, how many more sacrifices would be required before this war was over? The countdown has begun, Aegis said, its voice devoid of emotion. The Dominion fleet is on course. Estimated arrival time, 48 hours. Rhea's heart sank. She glanced around at her team, each of them absorbing the same grim news. The fight was not over. It had just begun. The Zarn were nothing compared to the Dominion, and in a matter of hours, the galaxy would be plunged into chaos once again. We need to prepare, Rhea said, her voice hardening with resolve. We don't have much time. Aegis, what are the Dominion's capabilities? Aegis's holographic form flickered again, projecting detailed information about the Dominion. Their ships were enormous, towering over anything the Zarn or even humanity could muster. Their weapons were unlike anything the Eternal Flame had encountered, capable of tearing through entire fleets with ease. And their forces? Relentless, calculated, and without mercy. We must not underestimate them, Aegis warned. They are not a race that can be reasoned with. Their return signals the beginning of a new era of conquest. They will stop at nothing to reclaim their former power. Rhea turned away from the display, her mind made up. The Eternal Flame had been their last hope against the Zarn. Now, it was their only chance against the Dominion. She knew what had to be done. We need to rally the remaining human colonies, she said, her voice filled with determination. We're going to need every ship, every soldier, every resource we can muster. The Dominion isn't just a threat to us, they're a threat to everything. We cannot let them take control. Her team nodded in agreement. They were tired, battered, and broken, but they were not done yet. The war was far from over. It had only just begun. Prepare for battle, Rhea ordered. The Dominion is coming. And we will be ready. The Eternal Flame powered up once more, its weapon systems glowing bright as they prepared for the next battle. This time, the stakes were higher than ever before. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders, and Rhea would not let them fail. The countdown had begun. And there was no turning back, the air in the command center of the Eternal Flame was thick with tension. Outside, in the vast expanse of space, the skies were filled with the menacing shadow of the Dominion fleet. Their arrival had been swift, their power overwhelming. Rhea stood at the bridge, her hands gripping the console, eyes fixed on the holographic map that displayed the enemy forces closing in on Earth. Targeting systems online, Aegis reported in its usual cold, mechanical tone. Enemy fleet on approach, Captain. We estimate they will be within range in less than 5 minutes. Rhea's pulse quickened. The Dominion had finally arrived. After years of preparation, after all the sacrifices, this was it. Humanity's last stand. The Eternal Flame was all they had left, no backup, no reinforcements, just one ship standing between the destruction of Earth and the annihilation of the human race. They've come in full force, said Lieutenant Cole, his voice grim. He looked up from the tactical console, his brow furrowed with concern. This is more than we've ever seen. We're outnumbered, and the ship's power is almost depleted. Rhea clenched her fists, but her resolve remained strong. "We knew this day would come," she said, her voice steady. "We've trained for this. We will fight until the end. We cannot let them take Earth. Not after everything we've been through." As the Dominion fleet closed in, the eternal flame shuddered beneath their feet, its energy flickering dangerously. The systems, still operating far beyond their original capacity, had held together through countless battles, but now they were pushing their limits. The energy readings were unstable, and the ship's internal mechanisms groaned as if protesting the tremendous pressure being placed on them. Outside, the vast armada of the Dominion loomed like an unstoppable force, their sleek ships swarming around the eternal flame. The Dominion's fleet consisted of hundreds of advanced war machines, AI-controlled vessels designed for swift and brutal combat. Each ship was equipped with weapons capable of obliterating entire cities, their artificial intelligence cold and relentless, without mercy or hesitation. The eternal flame, in contrast, had become a symbol of humanity's final hope. Its once ancient, nearly forgotten technologies now powered humanity's last defense. But the truth was clear, this warship was not invincible. Its power was fading. They had no more resources to draw from. Every shot fired, every maneuver executed, drained what little energy the ship had left. "Rhea," said Kira, one of the few remaining soldiers on the crew, "we're not going to make it if we don't do something drastic." Rhea turned to her. "What are you suggesting?" Kira glanced at the flickering energy readings and the holographic representation of the Dominion's approaching ships. "We initiate the final protocol." Rhea's eyes widened. She had hoped they wouldn't have to go that far. The final protocol was a last resort maneuver, a desperate attempt to ensure that the eternal flame could take down the Dominion fleet once and for all. It was a self-destructive plan, a weapon designed to harness the ship's core energy and channel it into a massive burst of energy, one powerful enough to destroy anything in its vicinity. "You're talking about sacrificing the ship," Rhea said, the weight of the decision pressing on her chest. "We'd have to give up everything." Kira nodded solemnly. "The ship's power is already critical. If we don't do something now, the Dominion will overwhelm us before we even get the chance to retaliate. The final protocol is humanity's last chance." Rhea hesitated. It was a terrifying thought, but she knew there was no other choice. They could either make this desperate play and possibly win, or they could let the Dominion crush them and everything they stood for. The eternal flame had already cost them so much, and this final battle would demand the ultimate sacrifice. "Do it," Rhea said, her voice resolute. As the crew initiated the final protocol, the eternal flame trembled with an intensity that shook them to their core. The ship's energy core hummed loudly, the very air around them vibrating with the sheer force of the power they were about to unleash. Outside, the Dominion fleet prepared for the final push, their ships closing in for the kill. Rhea could almost hear their engines as they neared. Then, without warning, the eternal flame decloaked itself. The immense warship appeared in the heart of the Dominion fleet, its dark, sleek silhouette illuminated by the glow of distant stars. The sight was nothing short of awe-inspiring. For a moment, the eternal flame hovered there, still and silent, before its weapon systems flared to life. "Prepare for battle," Rhea shouted. The first blast from the eternal flame tore through the darkness, a massive beam of plasma energy that obliterated a Dominion destroyer in seconds. The explosion was so violent that it lit up the surrounding space, sending shockwaves through the Dominion fleet. But that was just the beginning. Plasma cannons fired again, sending bursts of concentrated energy into the enemy ships, ripping them apart in fiery explosions. Gravity disruptors activated, pulling the Dominion's ships toward the eternal flame, where they were caught in the intense gravitational pull and torn apart. And then came the plasma vortexes, a weapon so powerful that it could distort space itself, pulling ships into an inescapable maelstrom of energy, where they disintegrated into nothingness. The visuals were chaotic. The eternal flame was a storm of destruction, its weapons cutting through the Dominion forces like a blade through butter. Explosions flashed across the battlefield, and the vacuum of space was filled with the screams of metal tearing apart. But just as victory seemed within their grasp, disaster struck. The eternal flame's power core began to falter, its energy levels dipping dangerously low. Aegis's voice echoed through the ship, its calm tone now tinged with urgency. "Commander Rhea, the ship is overloading. If we continue at this rate, the core will destabilize within the next 2 minutes." Rhea's heart pounded in her chest as she made her decision. She couldn't let the eternal flame be destroyed without ensuring that the Dominion was defeated. She had already lost so many. She couldn't lose this battle, too. "Override final protocol," Rhea commanded. "Activate self-destruction." The countdown began. Outside, the battle raged on. The Dominion's flagship, a gargantuan vessel looming in the distance, launched its final assault on the eternal flame. Waves of AI-controlled ships poured forward, their weapons charging for the final blow. In that moment, everything seemed to slow down. The eternal flame shuddered, the walls vibrating violently as the energy within the ship reached its peak. And then, with a deafening roar, the ship erupted in a burst of blinding light. The energy that exploded outward was unimaginable. It consumed everything in its path, obliterating the Dominion's flagship in an instant. The shockwave tore through the enemy fleet, scattering their remaining ships like leaves in a storm. The battle was over. The eternal flame had fulfilled its final mission. But at what cost? The ship was gone, reduced to a cloud of debris, a memory of humanity's last stand. Rhea stood in the wreckage, her heart heavy with loss. Bonner's sacrifice still echoed in her mind, his face flashing before her eyes. She had promised him they would win, and they had. The Dominion fleet had been destroyed. The Earth was safe. But the cost was immeasurable. Rhea looked out into the endless expanse of space. The battle was won, but the war had changed everything. Humanity had survived, but would they ever fully recover from the losses they had endured? Only time would tell. And so, the eternal flame was gone, but the memory of its sacrifice would burn brightly in the hearts of humanity forever. The aftermath of the final battle was surreal. Silence filled the command center of the eternal flame, a stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded just hours before. The echoes of explosions and the hum of the ship's power systems now seemed like distant memories. The crew stood in quiet disbelief, their faces worn with exhaustion and sorrow, each one processing the enormity of what had just happened. Humanity had won. The Dominion fleet, once an unstoppable force, had been shattered by the eternal flame. The enemy, broken and in retreat, had been forced to flee. Earth and its colonies, for now, were safe. But the victory was hollow, because the cost of it had been immense. Rhea stood at the center of the bridge, staring out at the vastness of space. The stars twinkled peacefully, a cruel reminder of the price they had paid to preserve this fragile peace. Her mind drifted back to Bonner, to Juno, and all the others who had given their lives. The faces of her fallen comrades haunted her thoughts. The faces of the soldiers who had fought with everything they had, who had sacrificed everything for the future. The eternal flame was silent now, its once glowing core dimming as the ship powered down. It had done its job, but it would never fight again. The Warship, an ancient vessel powered by long-lost technologies, had become humanity's weapon of last resort. And now, it was no more. It was a hollow victory. "Captain, we've lost contact with the fleet," Kira said, her voice steady but tinged with sadness. "It's over. The Dominion is retreating." Rhea didn't respond immediately. She had heard Kira's report, but her mind was elsewhere. She felt a deep emptiness, a vacuum where the victory should have been. The eternal flame was gone, its purpose fulfilled. The crew had done their duty, but the feeling of triumph was tainted by the weight of their losses. Aegis's voice broke through her thoughts, its tone now grave. Captain Rhea, I must advise caution. The Dominion fleet may be retreating, but this victory is not permanent. They will regroup. They will return. Rhea's eyes snapped back to the holographic display, where the remains of the Dominion fleet were drifting in space. The sight should have been a moment of celebration, but it wasn't. Aegis's words were a harsh reality. They will return. Rhea repeated, her voice a whisper. Yes, Aegis responded. The Dominion is vast and powerful. This defeat will only delay their plans. They will rebuild. And when they do, they will come for Earth again. The war is far from over. The crew fell silent at the weight of Aegis's warning. The battle they had fought, the battle they had won, was only a temporary reprieve. The Dominion's retreat was a mere pause in a war that was bound to resume. Humanity had won a single battle in a war that would likely rage for generations. Rhea's mind raced. She knew Aegis was right. The Dominion wasn't an empire that could be easily toppled. They had been relentless in their pursuit of dominance, and now that they had tasted defeat, they would undoubtedly seek revenge. But Earth's forces had proven their strength. The eternal flame had shown the world what they were capable of. And humanity, despite the immense cost, had risen to meet the challenge. Then we prepare, Rhea said, her voice steady. She turned to face the crew. We have a chance. A chance to rebuild, to strengthen ourselves, and to be ready for the next time the Dominion comes. We won't make the mistake of underestimating them again. Kira nodded, her face hardening with determination. We'll rebuild, and we'll be ready. We'll train a new generation of warriors. We won't let this happen again. Rhea looked at her team. They had fought together, lost together, and now, they would rebuild together. There was no time to mourn. The future was uncertain, and humanity's survival depended on what they did next. As the crew began to focus on their next steps, Rhea walked toward the observation deck, where she could see the stars stretch out before her. The Eternal Flame's final journey was over. The ship would disappear into hyperspace, its ashes scattered across the galaxy, its legacy forever etched into the history of humanity. But the war, as Aegis had warned, was not finished. In the distance, Earth appeared as a small blue marble, suspended in the darkness of space. It was their home, the place they had fought so hard to protect. And yet, Rhea knew that Earth could not survive alone. The Dominion would return, and when they did, humanity would need more than just the remnants of the Eternal Flame to fight back. Captain, Aegis said, interrupting her thoughts. The ship's systems are shutting down. All power is being routed to the core for its final jump into hyperspace. The Eternal Flame will be lost. Rhea took a deep breath, steadying herself. We knew this day would come. The Eternal Flame was never meant to last forever. But its legacy will live on. We'll make sure of that. The ship's engines roared to life one last time. The Eternal Flame began to move, its sleek form disappearing into the depths of space. Rhea watched it fade into the darkness, a symbol of humanity's strength, resilience, and sacrifice. In that moment, a sense of peace settled over her. It wasn't victory she felt, not yet. But it was something deeper, something more enduring. A sense that humanity had changed. That the people of Earth, battered and broken, had found a new purpose. They were no longer just survivors. They were warriors. And they would never again be caught unprepared. As the ship disappeared into hyperspace, Rhea turned to face her team. Their faces were a mixture of exhaustion, sadness, and resolve. But there was something else in their eyes now, something stronger. Hope. We have a new dawn ahead of us, Rhea said softly. The Dominion may return, but we'll be ready for them. Together, we will fight. Together, we will rebuild. And together, we will stand as humanity's last line of defense. The crew stood tall, their spirits ignited by Rhea's words. They had faced unimaginable loss, but they had also seen the strength of humanity's will. The Dominion had learned what it meant to challenge Earth. And though the war was far from over, humanity's resolve was stronger than ever. As the camera panned out, showing Earth in the distance and the eternal flame disappearing into the blackness of space, humanity's new chapter began. A new era, born from the ashes of war, where survival meant not just fighting for life, but fighting for something greater, the future of all humankind. The battle was not over, but humanity had found its strength. And that strength would carry them through whatever darkness lay ahead.